All right, well, welcome to part 2. I had a great time in Austin, and it was really awesome to see Giga Austin and how big it actually is. It is enormous. But anyways, had an awesome barbecue dinner this evening, and I am charging now to start making the next leg of this journey, which I'm headed to Colorado Springs. I'm headed to the Cheyenne Mountain State Park. I've got a campsite booked there. But it's for tomorrow night. I am, of course, not going to be able to make it all the way to Colorado Springs tonight, but I am going to try to make it as far as I can tonight so that my drive tomorrow is as little as possible. So here's what we're looking at for the trip. All right, so with this new update, I'm unable to show you exactly how many miles it is all the way there. I'm really not enjoying that so much. So hopefully in an update very soon, this will show me more information like it used to, but we're actually going to head back over to Dallas and then up and over. Originally, it wanted us to go to Abilene, but by doing that, you'd have to charge it for an hour to then pick up Childress, which is right here. So this way, it does add a stop, but it's 2 stops of 30 minutes and 30 minutes instead of 1 stop at an hour, and then whatever this road is to get all the way up. This is all highway. That's definitely preferred. So looking at times of arrival, I'm thinking Henrietta, Texas is probably about as far as I'm going to make it tonight. But that'll definitely get me a lot closer to Childress than waiting an hour in Abilene to be able to move. So I'm probably going to make it about this far, Wichita Falls area, before stopping for the night. So that's kind of the plan. And then in the morning, we would just have 1, 2, 3, 4 charging stops and then Colorado Springs. So basically, I don't know, add 8 hours to this. It'll be about 4 o'clock in Colorado Springs if I sleep for 8 hours of this trip. So we will see how this goes. And obviously, as you can see, this first charging stop, I have way more than enough charge to get there at 24%. So I should be there about 9:30, an hour and 45 minutes, 112 miles. And going ahead real quick and taking a look, so far in this trip, we're at 1,204 miles, 407 kilowatt hours consumed, 338 watt hour per mile. So we'll see what happens as we get closer to the mountains and we start increasing elevation, how that is impacted. Gonna go ahead and unplug and get rolling. All right, so here we go with our first stop, 29% at arrival. Supposed to be here for 30 minutes. We're probably gonna be here longer because I'm supposed to do a live stream now. So anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and get plugged in here in just a second. That last leg was 113 miles, an awesome 314 watt hour per mile, considering we were doing 80 the entire time. So 36 kilowatt hours consumed. Gonna go ahead and get plugged in for our next leg, which is a pretty long one, it looks like. All right, so I just finished up the live stream. Appreciate you guys reaching out, asking for a live stream. It helps when it gets late at night to wake me up, to have somebody to talk to. So I do appreciate that, but we are a little overcharged. Let's take a look at what we have for our next little leg here. All right, so we are charged at 90%. Our next stop is Henrietta, Texas. We should arrive at 22%. It is 2 hours and 20 minutes, 158 miles. Should be there a little after midnight. And that's probably going to do it for me because almost 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm too old these days to stay up too late. So that may be my final destination tonight. But that will get us several hundred miles down the road towards Colorado. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit the road and we'll see how we do. All right, we made it. Another really good spot. This one has a steak and shake in the gas station, and of course, service station there. That's about it. There's nothing else out here except for some dinosaurs, which I have no idea what that's all about. But anyways, 14%. It is 12:50 p.m. and we're supposed to be here for 25 minutes, but this is our last stop. I'm gonna have to park here tonight and get some sleep. So let's take a look. That last leg, we're starting to use more energy now as we're going up and the temperature is dropping. So it is 158 miles, 55 kilowatt hours consumed, 348 watt hour per mile. It's gonna go ahead and get plugged in, and I'm gonna start setting up shop for the evening. All right, so I have charged it up to 91%. I'm getting ready to unplug, but I'm gonna show you what the deal is. So we are overcharged if we were to leave right now, which we're not. So that extra buffer should give us enough to be able to run the HVAC tonight. It's 1:30 in the morning, and although I would like to stay right here where I'm at, there is quite a bit of stuff going on, and there's a trash can right over here, and I don't want to be disturbed, so I'm gonna go find a spot over in the back somewhere, or over here. I don't know, there's plenty of really good lit spaces where I can park and call it a night. So it looks like to me, if I do the math here, it's 1:35, and if I were to leave right now, I'd be there at 11:50. So that to me says it's 10 hours and 15 minutes to get to the state park. And that is what I'm looking at for the morning. So not too bad. I am glad I was able to get quite a bit in this evening. Not as much as I'd like, but still gonna make a big dent. So when I wake up, I'll check and make sure we still have plenty of juice to make it to Childress. And since it is a little bit colder, we want to make sure we have plenty of juice. So with that, I'm all set up back here, ready to get a good night's sleep and be well rested for a good day tomorrow. So I'll pick this back up first thing in the morning. All right, well, I had a good night's sleep. It actually worked out pretty well, not filling the air mattress all the way. So I actually had a little bit more of a sink into it, and it was even more comfortable. So it all depends on if you're used to a firm mattress or something a little bit more plush, which is nice because it gives you the flexibility. You can either pump more air in, get it more firm, or you can just leave it as full as it'll get on its own and have a little bit more of a plush feeling on the mattress. So it's about 6:30 in the morning, so let's take a look at what we have ahead of us. All right, first and foremost, 6:30, so about 5 hours, and we're down to 88%. So I believe we were at 91 or 92, so 4% over that 5 hours, keeping the heat running last night. So not bad at all. Looks like we still obviously have plenty of juice to get to our next charging stop at 20%, which is 128 miles away. It says almost 2 hours to get there. And to get all the way to the state park, it says about 4:30 p.m. However, they are an hour behind where we're at right now, so it'll be more like 3:30. So we'll just have to see how we do, and if we get there close to the 3:30, or if we lose some time along the way, which is always a very real possibility. So I'm gonna go ahead and get moving now that we're up and awake. Turn off camp mode and turn that off. Awesome. All right, let's go ahead and hit the road. arrived at 16% in probably the smallest town I've been to so far. It is in a gas station parking lot, which is good, so there are some amenities. Supposed to be here for 25 minutes, and then we'll be on to Amarillo, Texas. That last leg was 130 miles, 52 kilowatt hours consumed, 402 watt hour per mile. Combination of the rain, the wind, and the temperature. So a lot of things are impacting range right now, and hopefully we start to level out as the sun has come out. Gonna go ahead and get plugged in now. All right, so we're all charged up 73%. Next leg, 120 miles, just shy of 2 hours. Should be there about 10:30. Still making decent time. 4:45, close to 3:45 local time. So we will keep rolling. All right, so that turned out to be sketch. I did make it 3%, way less than anticipated, but actually I was able to turn that around to get 3% instead of 0. So anyway, supposed to be here for 30 minutes. I'm gonna go ahead and get plugged in and show you what happened here. That last leg was 121 miles, 50 kilowatt hours consumed, a whopping 414 watt hour per mile. Let's get plugged in and talk about what happened. All right, so on that leg, one thing I knew I needed to be prepared for, I just didn't realize I needed to be ready for it so early, is that elevation changes on the way into Colorado. So in Wichita Falls, I think the elevation was like 900 feet, and it was 3,700 feet where I'm at right now. So 2,700 feet up in that last stretch. And on top of that, it's extremely windy. It seems like the higher in elevation I'm going, the more wind that there is, and that's a straight headwind right now. So we are going from traveling west to north from this point forward. So we'll see what wind does from here on. But I did go ahead and take a look, and I have another 1,000 feet up for the next stop, and then another 1,000 feet up for the last stop. I think Colorado Springs is like 6,000 feet. So I have 2,500 feet to go, but it seems to be evenly spread out, and it's not quite as much as this last leg. So I am gonna overcharge just to be safe so I don't run into that again. I ended up slowing down quite a bit just to conserve energy. So while you're traveling, here's a couple tips for you. All right, so while I'm traveling, here's one thing that I'm always doing. The first thing is I'm looking at how many miles I have left to go, and then I look at my percent charge that I have. And if you double your percent charge, that is a good baseline to figure out how many miles you have to go in a reasonably bad situation. So doing 80 miles per hour, if there was headwind, as long as there wasn't elevation changes, you should be able to get 2 miles per 1%. And that's pretty large consumption. So that's what I do, is I look at, like right now, I would say I'm safely able to go 16 or more miles. So as long as my destination wasn't more than 16 miles, I'd feel pretty good. But by doing this, and every 10 or 20 miles I'm seeing that gap start to shrink. So I'm actually going less than 2 miles per 1%. And that's when I knew something was up. So originally, when you could see your consumption here, I'd be able to tell much sooner, but since it's not there, when you pull up your consumption map, this was showing over 500 watt hour per mile was my consumption, and those were all the red flags. So I ended up slowing down a lot and was able to bring that average way down to be able to make it. So that's really a good tip for you while you're traveling. That's how I do it. And this is the first time, though, I'm really going into real mountains out here in Colorado. So I'm going to be a little bit more cautious and make sure I have plenty of extra charge so I don't have to have this issue. But just remember, in an electric car, if it looks like you're not going to make it, just slow down. That's all you got to do. The slower you drive, the more range you're going to get. So in my case, I slowed down from 80 to 75. Still didn't seem like it was quite enough, so I slowed down 5 more miles per hour to 70 miles an hour. and that seemed to do the trick. So there you have it. I'm gonna let this charge for a little bit, and we will pick this back up and head towards Clayton, New Mexico. All right, so we should be charged enough. 84%, says we should arrive at 14%, about 1 o'clock, 2-hour drive, 124 miles. Again, we have 1,000 feet of elevation to climb roughly. So I'm gonna take it easy. I'll try to drive my normal speed, and I'll just keep an eye on the state of charge and estimated arrival. So I'm gonna go ahead and unplug and get going.
Ladies and gentlemen, very good. Today, once again, welcome aboard my body captain. Just about getting ready to go. Our different flight time today is estimated to be 2 hours.
All right, so we made it here, 7%. Supposed to be here for 25 minutes to charge. That last leg was really bad. 444 watt-hour per mile, 125 miles, 56 kilowatt hours consumed. This wind is really strong, and some of the elevation that's going on. We've got a really strong wind out here, and it is just killing our efficiency. But anyways, nonetheless, gonna go ahead and get plugged in because I had to add a detour to this trip. I cannot believe it. This windshield is brand new a week ago, and I've already got a brand new chip, which you can kind of see right there, maybe a little bit, right there. So lucky me, get to get that fixed. So gonna go ahead and plug this thing in. All right, so it says we still need a couple minutes, but I'm gonna go ahead and unplug, just be a little bit safe, keep it at a good reasonable speed. This wind is insane. 74% should arrive at 10% at the next charger, and there is no charger between there and Colorado Springs, so we are going to have a longer charge at Trinidad. So gonna unplug now at 75%. We have an hour and a half, 101 miles. We arrived 9%, and we're supposed to be here for like 50 minutes. It is V3. This place is completely full, so I did wait, but I'm gonna go ahead and get plugged in. That last leg was another very high consumption. 102 miles, 47 kilowatt hours consumed, 460 watt-hour per mile. So I'm gonna go ahead and get plugged in and get this rolling because my appointment's at 4 o'clock at Safelight, and it's already saying 4:16. So gonna get plugged in and we'll get this figured out. All right, so here's the deal. I don't know who needs to hear this, but if you're at a supercharger and it is completely full and Teslas are pulling up and sitting there waiting for somebody to go, when you get in your car and you're ready to leave and you unplug, don't go sit in your car, get situated, get your sandwich ready, congregate with the person in the passenger seat. Get your, what I meant to say is to be considerate of other people. If possible, pull out of that charging stall before you spend time getting all of your stuff in order, just out of courtesy for those people who are sitting there waiting for that stall. Just a pointer for you. All right, so the navigation's doing something really hokey, really funky. It says we need to charge for 20 more minutes. We're at 80%. It's only 130 miles all the way to the Colorado Springs supercharger, but it still says we wouldn't arrive with enough charge. It says 18% still needed just to get to zero, but we would arrive at Safelight at 27%. Now Safelight is, I just looked, 42 miles away from Colorado Springs supercharger, so that should be more than enough charge to get this all done and to make it to Safelight on time. So even though it says 20 more minutes to charge, I am going to go ahead and unplug. So we should be at Safe Light probably just before 4 or just at 4. An hour and a half to get there, 91 miles. Gonna unplug now. So I'm here in Colorado Springs at the charger, 15%, and a little bit of good news and an update for you. It turns out the crack on the window wasn't actually a crack, so it didn't pierce the laminate on the surface. So thank goodness. So anyways, I am gonna be here to top off because from here, I'm only about 8 miles away from the state park, although I don't know how far the campsite is from there. So I'm gonna give myself enough charge to make it around without having to worry. The campsite will have charging there. That last leg was 134 miles, 350 watt hour per mile, 47 kilowatt hours consumed. So I'm gonna let this thing charge up a little bit, and then after that I'm gonna go ahead and head to the campsite. I am gonna stop at the store though, because I want to get a couple of things to have a comfortable campfire tonight. So it's going to be a nice relaxing evening. That's certainly on the agenda. So, and then of course, I'd like to get something to eat at some point. So we'll let this charge for a little bit and then we'll head to the campsite. All right, so I've made it. I'm at the campsite. I just need to set some things up and get a fire going because it's 27 degrees up here in the mountain. It is freezing outside. So I want to get that fire going, but first I really need to get the bed set up and everything ready to go so that way I'm not having a fire blowing smoke into the car and all that stuff. So let's take a look because it ended up being a pretty decent trip overall. The first half of this morning was really rough. Those winds, I ended up looking on a map, it was 40-mile-an-hour sustained winds. It was very intense. It was a lot, and that has such a big impact on electric cars. It obviously has an impact on gas cars too, but with electric cars, it's not like there's a charging station every exit. So that's a big issue and something you need to be aware of. So where I'm from, we don't usually have weather like that and elevation changes like this. So I was less prepared than I should have been, and that's my fault. But lesson learned, and hopefully lesson learned for you as well. So if you're headed out west, or you live out west, or you're headed in the mountains, whatever, I highly recommend taking a look at some wind maps. So there's a few really good ones out there, but just to give you a heads up and be prepared what's ahead. Is it going to be a headwind? Is it going to be a tailwind, side winds? And really more importantly, is it going to be big wind, or is it just normal everyday stuff? So once we got into Colorado, the wind was not bad at all, and I didn't really have an issue. So let's take a look at how the trip ended through into Colorado. All right, so as you can see, our total trip so far, 1 mile short of 2,100 miles, 754 kilowatt hours consumed, and my average watt hour per mile went up to 359, which is a huge jump from what it was just yesterday. And that's what happens when you get stuck in this. Look at that, 13,500 miles, absolutely crazy. So yeah, that's where we're at so far for this. I did charge when I got to Colorado Springs, so I've got a little bit of a charge to get around if needed. But one of the reasons I booked this campsite was because it has 50 amp service. Now I only needed 30, but the only powered site available was a 50 amp. So I said, whatever, I'll take it. So I have 50 amps of service, which means I can get really good charge. And in the morning, I'll have whatever charge I want because there's plenty of time to completely charge this car. So I'll set it to 90% before I go to bed and let this car charge all the way up to 90. And then depending on the activities of the day, I'll figure out when to top it off all the way up before getting out of here sometime tomorrow. Haven't really decided what the full plan is for tomorrow yet, so that's still to be determined. But this is wrapping up part 2 of this trip. Last year, my wife gifted me this same week, and I went to Key West and came back home, and it was almost 3,000 miles. So this trip, I wanted to go somewhere west and do something a little bit different. So checking out Giga Austin was awesome, and then getting into Colorado has been awesome. I haven't yet had a chance to really get out and do some hiking and some of the things I'm really excited about doing. So hopefully tomorrow I'll be able to do some of that stuff before ultimately turning around and heading back towards home. So with that said, make sure that you tune in for part 3, which will be whatever happens after tonight through making it back home. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, of course, give it the thumbs up. If you haven't already, of course, subscribe to the channel as we continue to post content regularly. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Bearded Tesla. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.